On the evening of March 22, 1993, Carmen van Huss went with her family to visit her sick grandmother at Community Hospital South. The 19-year-old gave her father, James Van Huss Sr., and youngest brother, who had just turned 3, a ride to their Southside Indianapolis home, arriving around 9:30 p.m. Her father asked her to stay the night, but she said she had to get home to wash her Pizza Hut uniform. She was a waitress for the restaurant chain at the time. 2 days later, on March 24th, Pizza Hut managers were worried after Carmen missed days of work and did not answer her phone. They looked up the emergency contact on her employment application and reached her father. James went to his daughter's apartment and found a scolding note on her door. The door was also unlocked. Inside the apartment, he found a horrific scene. The Marion County Sheriff's deputies were called to Carmen's Turtle Creek North apartment in the 8,200 block of Harcourt Road, just south of St. Vincent Hospital, at around 7:30 p.m. on a report of an unconscious person. There, they found the teen lifeless, lying naked on her back on the floor, next to a bed. The door of the apartment was partially open, but investigators did not see any signs of forced entry. The deputies saw signs of a struggle inside the apartment, including a knocked-over table, clothing thrown on the floor, a large pool of blood near Carmen's head, and blood splatters around her body. She had over 60 stab wounds to her head, face, and body. She was also missing her left earring, which appeared to have been torn from her ear. The investigators believe the assault took place in the living room and that the suspect then went into the kitchen to possibly wash himself. The investigators found a white paper bag with bloodstains in the kitchen trash can. The police interviewed multiple people who lived near Carmen. The neighbors told the police that they heard Carmen and an unidentified man talking and laughing as they entered her apartment. Another neighbor heard Carmen yell, "Get off me! Get off me!" And he also heard slamming, banging noises and a male arguing for about 30 minutes. Then, at about 1:30 a.m., hurried footsteps were heard leaving the apartment. No one called the police, but someone complained to the complex management, who left a handwritten note on Carmen's door, chiding her for the noise and telling her to be more considerate of her neighbors. This is the scolding note her father found on her door. Marion County Sheriff Sergeant Dave Wilkes said at the time that several people, including some ex-boyfriends, were questioned, but there were no suspects. DNA evidence was found on Carmen's body, and blood was found on a paper bag in her apartment. Despite the effort of law enforcement, due to a lack of forensic techniques, the case stalled. The detectives had interviewed dozens of people over the years. They had followed up on hundreds of leads, but the case had eventually gone cold. In 2000, the detectives requested to add Carmen's DNA to state and national databases. Unfortunately, no matches were found. In 2014, Bill Carter, a captain with the Indianapolis Police, started looking into the case in his spare time. He raised money through GoFundMe for special DNA testing and started a Facebook group and a website called Justice for Carmen van Huss. In 2018, the department submitted the sample of DNA found at the scene to a specialty company. In November 2023, an investigator used online records to find out who was living near Carmen in March 1993. They came across Dana Shepard's name. Shepard was identified as a suspect with the help of genetic genealogy analysis. The 52-year-old man, who would have been 21 at the time of the horrific crime, was working as a janitor at the University of Missouri when he was visited by Indianapolis Metropolitan Police detectives early in 2024. Shepard was visibly shaking as he read the warrant for his DNA. Once the Marion County Forensic Services Agency received DNA samples for traditional forensic testing in June 2024, the agency confirmed that Shepard's DNA profile matched DNA samples found at the crime scene. Later, investigators looked at multiple arrest records dating from 1992 to 1996. These records confirmed that Shepard lived in the same complex and, at one point, in an adjacent building to the victim. When the detectives investigated how close his previous unit was to Carmen's, they found that it took just 30 seconds to get there. Both apartments were connected internally by a shared common area, which included a laundry room. Shepherd was arrested in connection to Carmen's slaying on August 3, 2024 on 2 counts of slaying and 1 count of assault with fatal force. When the officers went to arrest him, he invoked his right to a lawyer without speaking with the detectives. Shepherd appeared in a Boone County, Missouri courtroom via video call on September 4th. His bond was denied, and the judge set an extradition hearing for September 26th. Deputy Chief Kendale Adams of the Police Department's Criminal Investigations Division said in a statement that he hopes Shepherd's arrest brings Carmen's family some measure of peace. He added, "For 31 years, the family of Carmen van Huss has been searching for answers and justice." Carmen's family spoke at a press conference and said that they are grateful for those who helped solve the case. Carmen is missed by many people, including cousins who loved her like sisters and an aunt who loved her like a daughter. But many details of the case remain unknown, such as whether Carmen had planned to meet with her perpetrator in her apartment or had met him spontaneously. Carmen's brother, Jimmy Van Huss, said in a statement, "For my dad to have to find his daughter after what was brutally done to her makes this day bittersweet. I wish he was here to see it." Their father had passed away years back. Her family members said they are saddened that she was not able to graduate from college or get married. The family hopes that more cases will be solved thanks to DNA and genetic genealogy. Jimmy said, "We would love a bill, a law, a procedure, something in Carmen's memory to get the attention other cases deserve." On October 22, 2016, while firefighters in Lexington, Kentucky were taking part in training, they spotted vehicles on the floor of the river using a sonar radar. Many of them were stolen vehicles, however. One raised alarm for LFD District Chief Chris Warren. It was a 1967 Ford Fairlane that was very badly decayed and rusted. There were no identification markers on the car anywhere. Once the car was removed, the department discovered what Fayette County Coroner Gary Ginn described as scant skeletal remains and a woman's purse. Multiple other items were also found inside. The authorities immediately tried to identify the remains, but were initially unsuccessful. In 2017, District Chief Christopher Warren began to dedicate his every waking second to identify the remains. He began sifting through hundreds of missing person cases from 1968 to 1975 and located a missing persons case in Ohio, but the DNA markers were inconclusive. Warren searched thousands and thousands of missing persons reports until one day he found a blog that somebody said that was one of their family members. In July 2018, Chief Warren discovered the blog post and connected with the family. He shared with them what he found and slowly connected the dots. He was able to obtain DNA from a third-generational niece that was sent to NAMUS for comparison. Those results were inconclusive. Coroner Ginn said, "In order to match DNA, you have to have another person who has DNA on file, and if you do not have the file, you will never find the person." In June 2020, bone structures and DNA samples were sent from DNA Labs Internationals in Florida to Parabon Nanolabs in Virginia for additional profiling. It was not without complications, though. The first round of DNA sent to the lab had exploded during the transition, completely compromising the samples. It took another year before a second round of DNA could be sent back to Parabon Nanolabs for testing. It was like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel for Warren when he received the results in August 2024. The DNA was a match for Martha Smith Helmick and her sister, Flora Smith Helmick. 57-year-old Martha and her sister, 52-year-old Flora, were orphans, and they married 2 brothers. Both sisters were widowed by the year they disappeared, in August 1973. They were working as housekeepers at the time for a war veteran named John Keaton, who was 81 years old. On the night they had disappeared, on August 3rd, John was driving the sisters to his family reunion in Dabblett, Kentucky, in his light green 1967 Ford Fairlane. John was noted to have been poor at driving at the time, as he had received several traffic citations. He had gotten into an accident sometime before the trio's disappearance. They never showed up at the reunion, and they were reported missing and had been missing ever since. The multiple items that were found inside the vehicle led to the identification of Martha. Items such as bones of a foot inside pantyhose, an elevated shoe that Martha used to wear, a coin purse that had items inside the family confirmed. Also, a gray dress Martha wore at the time of her disappearance, and a key that was traced back to a trailer Martha lived in, but disposed of years ago. A piece of the puzzle toward confirming Martha's identity was a fractured tibia bone that had never healed correctly, which she needed corrective shoes for. Because of the fractured tibia, one of her legs were shorter than the other. Coroner Jin said that they believe all 3 victims drowned in the accident. Chief Warren said, "The day that I got confirmation the DNA was proven, that was an amazing phone call I got to make. To call Kathy, a niece of Martha's, and her family, and says it is over like they are coming home." Chief Warren said, "So many moments throughout the entire investigation that if one thing had not happened, if this one thing had not happened, there would be no case. She is like an aunt to me at this point, like my Virginia mom. That whole family is fantastic. I love being around them and talking to them. We will always be in touch, there is no doubt." In August 2024, Martha's remains were returned to her family in Bridgewater, Virginia. The family held a small funeral and laid her to rest in the family cemetery next to her husband. The remains of her sister and their employer have never been found. Authorities have closed the cases of Martha, Flora, and John after concluding that an accident had occurred. The bodies of Flora and John have never been found, but it is suspected they had perished alongside Martha in the Kentucky River. On January 9, 1980, 25-year-old Susan Leigh Wolfe was abducted while walking in the 200 block of Franklin Boulevard in Texas. She was walking from her residence to a friend's house. Susan had just enrolled at the University of Texas Austin School of Nursing. Susan had planned to stay the night with her friend on 49th Street because her residence had been exterminated for roaches. A witness reported seeing Susan walking eastbound in the 200 block of Franklin Boulevard when a Dodge Polara stopped and the driver exited, placing her into a bear hug with a coat over her head, and he forced her into the car. The witness also saw the passenger door of the car open, but did not see what the passenger did during the abduction. The witness said it was a white vinyl/maroon 2-door Dodge. The vehicle also had major collision damage to the passenger door. The next morning, on January 10th at 8:34 a.m., a citizen found the partially clothed body of Susan while inspecting rental property in the South Alley of the 2000 block of East 17th Street in Austin. Dr. Robert Bayardo performed an autopsy on the body. The results showed that Susan had lost her life from a single gunshot wound to the head. There was also evidence that she had been strangled and assaulted. The investigation produced more than 40 persons of interest over the years, but only 6 suspects were interviewed. Unfortunately, the detectives could not find the guilty party and the case went cold. A big break in the case came in April 2023, when detectives submitted evidence related to Susan's assault. Almost a year later, the results ruled out the 6 suspects and identified 78-year-old Deck Brewer Jr. as a possible match. In September 2024, Austin police detectives obtained a DNA sample from Brewer and interviewed him in Massachusetts. According to the police, Brewer said he had been in Austin and San Antonio, Texas, around the time of the slaying. Brewer invoked his right to counsel after he was told that his DNA was found at the scene of a slaying. His DNA sample was tested, and the report read that he cannot be excluded as the contributor of the partial major component in this DNA profile. Brewer was then charged with Susan's slaying. Brewer is already incarcerated in Massachusetts on unrelated charges. The police are continuing to search for the person who was in the passenger seat on the day she was forced into the car. Charles Wolfe was only 15 years old when his sister, Susan, was slain. He said, "Susan was always a surrogate mom to me. She was 10 years older, and when I look back at the family videos and movies, I am always in her care." He added, "Her demise certainly left a scar, an open wound in our family that we never thought that there would be any type of healing for." Charles said that he and his family held on to hope for decades that justice would eventually be served. But as the years progressed and no updates surfaced, he started to let go of that hope. He said, "Then, on Friday, I turned on the KXAN broadcast, And there it is, the break that we had been waiting for. He continued, "It was amazing. It was an out-of-body experience. It was as if a dream had come true. I actually was dumbfounded. I could not believe what I was watching." While Charles was happy to learn of the break in the case, he said he was disappointed he learned from the news. He said, "I expected to hear something from APD prior to the broadcast being aired. I am certainly happy that there has been a break, but I am really disappointed with the communication." When asked why the Austin police detectives did not alert Charles, the APD said they are working with detectives to find out more. On December 15, 1996, deputies responded to 6,700 US 41 North Palmetto, Florida, and observed a body floating face down in a drainage canal. The divers retrieved the body of an unidentified white female, wearing a gold ring on her right index finger. The medical examiner on the scene noted the victim had trauma to the right side of her neck and face. The autopsy found that the female victim had been stabbed 83 times throughout her body. The report also noted that there was no water in her lungs and no evidence of assault. The body remained unidentified until May 22, 1997, when dental records positively identified the victim as Doris Korell. The detectives were unaware that the St. Pete Police Department had been looking for 45-year-old Doris Korell, who lived with her boyfriend Stephen Ford in a duplex on 92nd Avenue North Street, Petersburg. Her daughter, who lived in Maryland, reported her missing on December 11, 1996, after Stephen called her to ask if she had seen her mother. Stephen claimed Doris left in her car to go shopping after they argued. Detectives located Doris's red Mazda RX-7 on December 18th at the Pinella Square Mall, but there was no evidence that a struggle or attack took place inside the car. The detectives searched the home of Doris and Stephen again a few days after Doris was reported missing. They noticed a decomposing smell inside his residence. They also discovered stains on the bedding and mattress that were not there during the previous search. A note was also found that Stephen addressed to his two sons, describing how he wanted to be with Doris as she was no longer alive. They also found opened Christmas gifts. Stephen denied involvement in her disappearance or demise. Detectives asked him what he thinks should happen to the person that took her life. After a significant pause, he said, "An eye for an eye." He also said, "If I took her life, I should get the end-of-life penalty." On December 24, 1996, the detectives went to Stephen's residence to conduct a follow-up interview. When he did not answer the door, they made entry through an unlocked window and found him semi-conscious and foaming from the mouth. He had ingested bleach to try and end his life. St. Pete detectives interviewed Stephen's former girlfriend on January 5, 1997, and learned about a letter mailed in October the previous year, in which he wrote, "I hope she gets the message that I do not want her here anymore." However, due to a lack of physical evidence and leads in the months to follow, the investigations went cold, and Stephen then moved to Delaware. In 2017, a cold case detective reopened the case and began a thorough process of re-examining files from both Manatee and St. Pete police. Over the next 6 years, new information came to light. Acquaintances of Doris said the couple were having domestic and financial problems and that Doris feared Stephen. Then, in July 2024, DNA swabs obtained from Doris's autopsy were sent off for testing. On August 12, 2024, the detectives received notification that no foreign DNA profiles were identified, making it improbable that Doris was assaulted at the time of her slaying. They also learned through DNA testing that the mysterious bed stain was Stephen's bodily fluids from an attempt to take his own life. The detectives believed that he parked her car at the Pinella Square Mall and wiped it down. Detectives also learned that he rented a storage unit the day after Doris went missing. He moved all of her jewelry, clothing, and photos to the unit so that her daughter could not get it. The cold case detectives noted that his behavior showed a clear pattern of consciousness of guilt. Stephen also deliberately tried to mislead investigators, and because of his attempts to end his own life, it led investigators to believe that he was the one responsible for ending Doris's life and disposed of her body in Manatee County. On August 16, 2024, with the help of the Delaware State Police, he was taken into custody during a traffic stop near his home in Georgetown, Delaware. He was extradited and booked into the Manatee County Jail on August 30th. According to Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody's office, Stevens stated that his past has come up to haunt him after his arrest. Doris's daughter, Laura Gaddy, said, "He was the prime suspect. Detectives just worked through everything until they figured they had a good, substantial case to go ahead and make an arrest." Laura said the following about the upcoming court proceedings: "I am going to learn of new things that I do not know, and I will be able to ask the questions that I have. Questions she hopes are answered when Stephen Ford goes on trial." She said why he did it with the weapon that he used, the purpose of doing it, and then disposing of her body. A suspicious black bag was left smoldering on an Atlanta, Georgia street and was found by horrified locals. Deputies responded to the intersection of Whitfield Road and Stitcher Road on December 6, 2007. There, they discovered the burning bag. When they opened the bag, they found partial human remains inside. The remains were partial, as the hands, feet, and head were missing. It was determined that the remains belonged to an adult black woman, but she could not be identified. Because of this, it left investigators with more questions than answers. The case quickly went cold. For nearly 2 decades, this case has remained a mystery. A closer look at the case and advancements in DNA technology finally led to a breakthrough in 2023. The DNA was sent to labs in Virginia and Houston for analysis as part of a renewed focus on cold cases. The investigators said those results were then sent to the GBI Crime Lab for comparison. On December 13, 2023, a positive DNA match was made, and the identity was that of Nicole Alston, whose last known residence was Manhattan, New York, and she was 24 years old in 2007. Nicole left the Big Apple in 2007 with her friend Angel Marie Thompson for a new life in Atlanta, Georgia. Her family said the last time that they heard from her was Thanksgiving of that same year. It appears that Nicole's friend Angel was wanted in New York for theft and identity fraud at that time. In a bizarre twist, for 8 years after the body parts were found in 2007, Nicole appeared to be alive and well, according to the use of Social Security benefits, food stamps, and, at one point, Section 8 housing. It turns out it was not Nicole. Instead, it was her good friend Angel, who she had begun her Atlanta adventure with years earlier. The authorities say she had been assuming Nicole's identity and collecting her benefits from 2007 to 2015, totaling $200,000. The charade ended in 2015, when the Social Security Administration tried to contact Nicole to have her requalify for benefits. At that point, Angel took back her own identity, but investigators began to connect the dots and were able to link the two cases for the first time. Sergeant Stuart Smith with the Troup County Sheriff's Office said, "At this time, we cannot really say 100% if this person was the perpetrator or not." They believe the actual slaying did not happen in Troup County. They believe it took place somewhere else, and that the remains were just discarded there on the side of the road. So the question still remains: who slayed her? On August 19, 2024, Angel Marie Thompson was arrested and charged with concealing the demise of her friend Nicole. But the Troup County Sheriff's Office said that it has not been determined who actually took Nicole's life, and the investigation is still ongoing.